Get ready to expand your intuition, connect to God, experience deeper relationships, open your heart and feel more joy, and finally end the chaos in your life. Are you ready to get unstuck and more? You ask, how do I do it? The answer is simple. The time has come for peak spiritual fitness. It starts right now on Spirituality Bootcamp with your host, Kristen White.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us. We are now in week 4 of the wonderful series, Spirituality Bootcamp, the 7 principles of spiritual practice. And whether you've been with us all along or you're just joining us, we're so thrilled to have you with us on this journey. You know, we started out talking about sacred space, and then we went into the expansive practice of gratitude, and then moved into forgiveness. And now, in this week, we are heading into what I believe, for many of us, is the most important and powerful place to really take a look and make a big shift in our lives. And this is the language that we speak to ourselves, inside ourselves, every single day. You know, a good friend of mine is a Tibetan monk, and he talks about having the monkey mind. And I know many of you out there have heard about the monkey mind, and that is the repetitive thoughts that we find just chattering up. They're like bubbles. They come up in our mind. Often we don't even voice these words. But what these words are is they really are a strong message to the universe about what we want to attract into our lives. So whether they're positive or negative, that oftentimes determines the impact of what we see unfolding before us in that present moment. So the guest that I have on today, I'm so excited to have her, Sunny Dawn Johnston. She is a psychic medium. She has a direct connection to the angels, and she's written an incredible new book called Invoking the Archangels, the 9-step process for healing your body, mind, and soul. And so she's going to join us right now and share with us a lot about this whole idea of affirmations and the positive impact our language can have on us. So, Sunny, thank you for being with us.
Thank you so much. I'm excited to be here.
I know.
Very excited.
You know, we were just talking about the power of language, and what are your thoughts around that?
Well, you know, I think that it's so important to be mindful of what it is that's going on in our heads. I like that monkey, what did you call it, monkey business? Or
the monkey mind.
The monkey mind, monkey mind. I think that's great. I call it stinkin thinkin. But same idea, you know, we have to be really, really conscious and aware of what it is that we're focused on and what we keep replaying over and over in our heads. And, you know, for me, that was such a challenging experience to get from a place of the natural thoughts that were in my head, which were negative and which were putting myself down and not seeing the value in myself, and really make a conscious effort to focus on speaking kindly to myself and thinking kind thoughts about myself and others, of course. But it starts with us, and then the ripple effect of that moves outward to the people around us. So it's an extremely powerful tool, and I would say one of the most critical ones in my life in turning myself from a lower vibrational place of self-hatred and anger and frustration to a place of self-love and joy and peace.
You know, what you're saying resonates with me so deeply as well, because I know that, you know, when I started on this journey that led me to create Spirituality Bootcamp, one of the things that really turned things around for me is that I consciously committed to using powerful, high-vibration language in the form of affirmations, even though I didn't necessarily believe it was true at the time because my life was having like a meltdown. But I said, you know what, I need to put an energetic, fuel injection that's positive into the situation. So I affirmed that positive things were happening, even though everything at the time appeared to me otherwise. But it started to shift very quickly when I realized that I wasn't reinforcing the negative, that I had started to put energy into that flow of more positive vibrations in my life.
Absolutely. And that's really what happened for me, too. When I was 19, I was a single teenage pregnant mom, and right after I gave birth to my son, realized that the environment that I was in, living with an alcoholic and being in a very unhealthy physical and emotional environment, I realized, I got to do something to shift this. And the book that I found that created the awareness for me was You Can Heal Your Life by Louise Hay. And in that book, she said, just start saying nice things, even if they don't feel real. Just like you said, even if they don't feel real, just start saying them. And so I did that, and I didn't believe them, and I just kept doing it because I didn't have anything else to do. There was nothing else to focus on, and so I thought, well, maybe this will work. And the more I did it, the more I did it, the more I did, and it wasn't necessarily at the time that I felt like the things were true, but it did take time in my brain and time in my physical experience to then not be focusing on the negative. So it replaced that negative thinking that was just happening without even being conscious of it, and I had a conscious effort to focus on things even if I didn't believe them that were a higher vibration. And that started to move the energy to a place of, okay, now I can feel that higher vibration. Now some of these things actually might feel like they're a little bit within reach. And from there is where I started realizing that the more that I focus on it and the more that I affirm it, it comes into the feeling of it. And in the feeling of it is where then the manifestation occurs. But it definitely started with the affirmation.
I love what you're talking about, and thank you so much for mentioning that book by Louise Hay, You Can Heal Your Life. I am a firm believer not only of that book, there's some other ones that I love that are great for affirmations. There's, of course, Catherine Ponder's Dynamic Laws of Prosperity, and for those of you who like Paramahansa Yogananda, we have his Scientific Healing Affirmations. I mean, there's so many great books out there that have affirmative statements. And, if you don't know where to start, even something as simple as, trusting in God, I'm assured of right outcomes, or, I am well and I am in the divine flow. I mean, it can be something really simple, and I think that's important to share with everyone, is that we don't have to have this elaborate manifesto of positivity just to start to see results in our lives.
Right, absolutely, and I think it's so important to be able to know that if you get stuck and you're like in a bad space, let's say, you can just say I am love, and that can just at least be something until you can get to a place of thinking, okay, what is it that I'm focusing on that's negative? And what I always teach, I learned for myself and teach to my students and clients is just flip it. Whatever your negative is, flip it to what is the opposite of that. And whatever the opposite of that is, affirm that. And that will start to make the change for you internally.
It's interesting, and we were just chatting about this before the show, and I know that your work is primarily, working with angels. And angels are really the true messengers. And I also work with angelic energies. And I know that it feels like they're always really communicating with us all the time. Can you share with us a little bit about some of the affirmations that have flown, through you as a channel with the angels, and what they have to say to all of us on the planet about, just having these positive words and positive messages?
Well, for me, it's been with working with the angelic realm. What shifted for me was the realization that I was worthy of all that I desired, all that I wanted, all that I dreamed of, and that I was worthy simply because I am. I didn't have to do anything in order to deserve that, and in order to earn that. You have worth simply because. So that self-worth is something that we are spirit embodied, and we are literally, that is our innate being, is worthiness, is value. And so working with the angelic realm has really taught me about unconditional love. First of all, unconditional love with myself, because you have to have it in order to give it, and then being able to be that unconditional love for others. So in my experience with the angelic realm, it's brought the messages have come through of, I am loved unconditionally. I am open to receiving healing. I accept love from the angels. I am divinely guided by the angelic realm. I deserve all that I desire. All of those. I am peace. all of those are vibrations that, for me, were helpful in lifting not only my own mind chatter, but also my vibration to then start experiencing and feeling the angelic realm. And when you start to feel that energy and you start having experiences of validation that they're present, seeing them, hearing them, then you know, not just intuitively, but you know on a physical, human level that you're doing something to move yourself in a more positive direction, and you get the validation through the manifestations in your life.
You know, I think what you are talking about is so important because it's not just saying the words, it's about the feeling and the experience that comes when you get into that zone where you actually believe it. And it doesn't happen immediately for everyone. You know, it can take a little bit of time. It depends on how loud the roar is of the negative energy that you have. I think of negative chatter and negative energy as almost like, you know, one of those big gray clouds in the sky. Eventually, you know it's going to pass. You know, it's not going to stay gray forever. But it can move through really quick, or it can just kind of linger for a while. And sometimes, you know, we just have to be persistent in the language that we use to ourselves that's positive, because maybe we have been persistent in using that negative language for an extended period of time.
Absolutely. That was one of the things that I remember being kind of an aha for me was the word affirmation. I always thought that an affirmation meant something positive, and when I started really learning about this and having these experiences for myself, I learned that I was affirming things all the time. They just weren't positive. So an affirmation isn't necessarily positive. You can be affirming negative things all the time. So it's really the direction that you choose to focus. And I think that if you have been in a natural funk or had that gray cloud over for a certain amount of time, then it's difficult oftentimes to see the other side or to see the rainbow, so to speak. And what I tell people is fake it till you make it. You know, just say something that feels a higher vibration than where you are, and eventually, if you say it enough, you create that there's only so much space in us to be able to hold. So if we've got all this negative thinking going on, if we just start saying positive things, even if they don't feel like they apply at all, it's going to take up some of that space. And the more it does that, it starts to transmute some of the negative energy that we've been holding on to, some of the pain we've been holding on to, and moves us in a direction. And it isn't always quick, especially in the beginning. It depends on how stuck you've been. You know, for me, it was a lifetime of critical thinking and judgment and putting myself down and lack of esteem. And so it took for me a very, very consistent year of living in the unhealthy environment and using the positive affirmations to get to a place where I could see that I could do something different.
You know, I think that what you are saying, I know that what you're saying is so true. There are many of us, people on this call right now listening to the show, who come from an environment that has a lot of language in it that didn't support them. Maybe we had parents who were critical. Maybe we were, you know, involved in a relationship that there was a lot of insults and criticism. And so being sensitive, because a lot of us are very sensitive people, you know, our intuition is opening up, you know, we can sense and feel, we have empathetic connections to others. And so oftentimes, you know, we hear these things, and I think the most important point, for myself at least, was to realize that none of it is personal. You know, that all these people around me, whether they were my family members or whoever, that they were projecting negativity or criticism towards me, but it actually wasn't even about me. It was about their own pain. And that helped me start to dissolve things so that my own positive language could rise up to the top.
Yeah, absolutely. That you know, that not taking things personal. I think if people could begin to put that as their focus each day, then I think that it would transmute a lot of that energy. When we start to realize that, you know, people are just expressing pain, and they're expressing pain in different ways. And some people express it through physical manifestation. Some people express it through words. And the pain that they manifest or that they are expressing is oftentimes a projection onto someone else, because it's easier to see it in somebody else than it is to see it in ourselves. And when you can recognize that it's not about me, that this is, so from my experience growing up, I had a father that was very, very critical. He was critical of everyone around him, but living in his home, being his daughter, he was very critical of me, and especially the way that I looked. So when I started gaining weight as a teenager, a form of protection, weight, when I started gaining weight, my critical thoughts got worse. But part of the reason for that was because he was so critical of me and teasing me and picking on me. And so that critical thought just happened over and over and over again. Then I had a mother that was very critical of herself. So she was never critical of me, but she was so critical of herself and always putting herself down that the experience that I learned, although they were doing the best they could at that time, was criticism. And so that language externally and internally played, and it shifted who I was. And I gave it the power because I believed that what my father was saying was true. And when I learned years later, like 15 years later, that had nothing to do with me, that was his own insecurities and it was his own pain, and it was just being expressed towards me, but it was nothing about me, it unlocked the door to my freedom, really.
I do believe that realizing that each one of us is really inside of ourselves, having our own conversations about our own life's journey, our own pain, our own karma, whatever you want to call it, and realizing that what we send out to others, we're still just only thinking about ourselves, that is so incredibly liberating. That for me also was just a turning point. It's like, wait a minute, this all of this drama is not mine. It doesn't belong to me. And in releasing that connection was an incredible, like almost like a big boost through a cannon to like just a higher level of freedom. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's a beautiful, beautiful gift when you can stand in the space of the pain and the emotion and witness what's happening around you and not take it on as yours.
So to all of you who are listening, you are listening to Spirituality Boot Camp here on VividLife University. And my guest today is Sunny Dawn Johnston, and she is a gifted psychic medium. She works directly with the angels. She has a new book out, Invoking the Archangels, 9 Steps to help you heal your body, mind, and soul. And we are going to take a quick break. And when we come back, we're going to talk a little bit more about how the use of positive language and affirmations can help you increase your access to your intuition. And we're also going to get real specific, because this is a boot camp, how you can have some tools out there to track your language and your beliefs. And I think when you start to really look at what's going on inside, that stinkin thinkin or that monkey mind, you will be amazed. My guest today is Sunny Dawn Johnston, and we were just talking about how the power of language can raise our vibration. And I know a lot of you listening are interested in just increasing that intuitive flow of messages into your life. Sunny, can you share with us a little bit about how that works?
Sure. If we want to be more intuitive, the bottom line, we need to raise our vibration. And so if you're in a negative place, or you're struggling within yourself, or you have some of that thinking going on in your head, then you have a lower vibration. And what we need to do is we need to get to a place where the higher vibration we have, the more we raise our vibration, the higher our energy level is. And when we are in a higher vibration, we can connect more with the spirit world, whether that be deceased loved ones, spirit guides, angels, archangels, ascended masters. So our job then becomes to be in a place of living from that higher vibrational space. When you are in that place, your intuition starts to speak much more loudly, much more often, and more clearly. And it isn't that it isn't speaking before when you're in the negative space, but when you're in that lower vibration, you can't hear it. through all of the junk that's going on in your life. So there are a lot of reasons to affirm the positive things and focus on what it is you desire. And one of them is that greater connection with your own spirituality and your own intuition. And so I kind of look at it as like a little chart, 0 to 100. And let's say most of us are, the average person is sitting at like 30%, and 100% is the highest vibration. Well, if you're sitting at 30%, you are only going to receive the energy that lives at 30%. That is not where the angels and the archangels and the ascended masters, that's not where their vibration is. So we've got to raise our vibration to really connect with that and then receive the messages, and those start coming to you, in seeing and hearing and feeling and knowing, and they start coming more and more and more often as you're ready to receive them.
And I love what you just said, because that's really what Spirituality Boot Camp is all about, is what are the practical steps that you can take to raise your vibration so you have a greater connection, your life is in a greater flow. So we started talking about earlier on in the series about sacred space, and I know that maybe you can share with us, do you have a place that you go to where you do your affirmations? I know you live out in Arizona. What does your sacred space look like?
Well, it's interesting because I used to have, I have a healing center, and there's a beautiful energy in that healing center, so I can go there at any time, and that space is already created for me, basically. It carries that vibration. But for the last 9 months, I've been traveling all over the country on this book tour, and so what I've had to do is I create my space, and that space is wherever I happen to be. So, a week ago I was in Vail, Colorado, and I was up in the mountains. That was my sacred space for that amount of time. And today I'm in Ogden, Utah, and I'm in someone's home, and that is my sacred space. I think that we can create our sacred space based on our own energy and our own vibration and the intention that we choose to focus on. If we really, meaning we are taking that energy with us, and we don't have to have tools, although they are nice, and although we like to have those things. Ultimately, we have to be able to create that space because it's truthfully within us.
And don't you think it's so much about setting aside that time with the intention that I'm shifting my energy right now? Like the intention behind the words is so powerful.
Yeah, the intention is very, very important. And, a lot of people, when we're talking about practical steps and practical tools, a lot of people think you have to do all these things in order to raise your vibration, in order to get to that place of thinking more positive. And what I would say is that it's as simple as finding something that brings you joy. And to me, it doesn't matter what that thing is. But whenever we do something, even if we're like kicking and screaming to do it, once we get to the place and we actually have the experience of it, it raises our vibration. It's one of the easiest ways. So some people, that's meditation. Some people, that's prayer. Some people, it's dancing or singing or walking in nature or planting flowers or rolling around on the grass with their puppies or holding a baby or listening to music. Any of those things bring us joy. And there's a million more, depending on who we are and where we are on that particular day. But when we spend the time and energy and we set the intention that says, you know what, I am an absolute loving being and I deserve and desire to have more joy in my life, and I take 5 minutes, 15 minutes, 3 minutes, 25 minutes, depending on the day also, to focus on raising my vibration through joy, it is an absolute important thing to do, and it is so much more simple than we make it. So much more simple than we make it.
I completely agree with you, and this is probably the most important and most powerful point of this whole conversation that we're having here, is that it is simple. It's as simple as committing to allow more joy into your life, because joy in itself is the ultimate affirmation. Even if you don't have the right words, if you give yourself permission, and that's one of the things that we were talking about earlier on in the series. Sometimes we don't give ourselves permission to forgive, and that blocks out our joy. We don't take the time to express gratitude, and that blocks our joy. And so if we can do that housekeeping in those areas, release the past things that have happened that we still feel some energy around, or take a look at what is going well in our lives. Those are both gateways to allow more joy and more positive language in our lives. And not to be Pollyanna, like everything's fantastic all the time, but that, sometimes we just have all this stuff packed in there, and you touched on this earlier, that blocks our ability to even allow any joy into our lives.
Right. Well, I use an example, and it's one of the best ways that I can explain it. If we used our body as a container, and we're holding all kinds of pain and sadness and anger and frustration, and so let's just say we're filled up to our neck, basically, with all of this pain and sadness and anger and frustration, and we keep that there for a lot of different reasons. A lot of people do. And then we put some affirmations on the top of it. So let's just say above our neck, basically is got the affirmations. It's like putting flowers on a bunch of crap. And
right.
It's the best way I can explain it. And people
a beautiful
get it.
Visualization.
But so you're putting a bunch of flowers on top of all of this stuff. And what we need to do is we need to get to a place where we release the junk, the crap, we release that junk, and then as we start to put the flowers, the affirmations on, we can actually bring some of that into that container. And if we continue to release and replenish, this is one of the steps in my book, it's step 7 in my book, release and replenish, let go of what doesn't work, get rid of the anger, the frustration, the sadness, the pain, and bring in the positive feelings and love and experience and joy. Then when we can get to a place where we've moved that lower vibration energy and we bring in the positive vibration energy, that container starts to vibrate at a different level. And when it vibrates at a different level, then that's when we're in that manifestation of joy and happiness and peace and harmony, and that is what we're talking about.
It's interesting because when I think about even myself, and when I wanted to originally shift some things in my life, what I used to say is, I don't want this anymore.
Right,
and what the universe,
right.
I realized, would hear is that, I do want this. They don't hear the don't.
Right,
and
absolutely.
That, so that when we are using language and, and I think of this positive affirmations, like you said, like the flowers. Even if we just add don't in front of what I don't want, you're still adding like some extra, stinky on top of the pile of the stinky. You need to actually have a whole vibration of a thought that is complete and not I don't want something. And it's interesting because I've used this in my life and just attracting relationships and manifesting opportunities and all kinds of things. And it actually doesn't work when I just put don't in front of what I don't want. When I make a list of everything I don't want as an affirmation, that doesn't work as well.
Right. It doesn't work. And what we want to do is we want to go to the place of I am, or I desire, or I want, because that affirms that it is what I am and who I am. And the other thing that I think is the only time that I would use the I don't is when you are so unclear about what you do want that all you know is what you don't want. So There was a time in my life where I had to sit down with a notebook and I just started writing all the things that I said to myself. And there was a lot of them, and none of them were positive. But I wrote this list of all the things I felt about myself, and then I wrote all the things that I was focusing on that I didn't want. And it was difficult to look at that. But it also was really affirming to me, because as I looked at it, I recognized, oh my God, I have all these things in my life. All the things I don't want are the things I'm living. And so that's exactly what I did. I took all of those down, and then on the opposite piece of paper, I wrote the opposite of every single one of those. And not that every single one of the opposites was exactly what I wanted, but it helped bring me clarity that said, okay, Sunny, this is really the area that you're looking in. So if I'm saying I don't want to be taking care of everybody, then what it was saying is I want to be free. And if I don't want to live with an alcoholic, I want to live in a healthy relationship. And so as I started looking at those, that brought me the clarity to go, oh my gosh, no wonder you're in this circle. No wonder you keep dancing around this with different people and different experiences, because you keep affirming that this is the environment that you deserve based on your vibration and your words and your language and your thoughts.
Yeah, the universe does pay attention to us. Like whatever we ask, we do receive. And I think that is, in some ways, I mean, I hate to say it's the sense of humor, but it is that bit of like, okay, when you finally start to get it, you think, okay, I guess I did get exactly what I asked for, so I better pay more attention to what I'm actually asking for. And I love this image of you sitting down with a piece of paper and writing things out. I personally love ritual and ceremony. And I know that when I was ready to let go of a lot of different things, I just kind of reached it like I was full.
Right.
I sat down and I said, all right,
was filled up.
I was full.
You were needing some flowers.
There was no room for the flowers.
Yep.
And I said, I'm going to have a ceremony. And so, I just created one myself, and I encourage anyone who's listening that you can do that. And I sat down and I said, okay, I'm going to pick a piece of paper, and I thought, okay, I'm going to use red marker because that's, symbolic of like what, there's energy around it, what I want to release. And so I wrote all the things that I wanted to leave my life, or just release from my life, to let go. And I even, did a whole sheet on things that needed to be forgiven, either that I needed to forgive myself for, or that I wanted to forgive others for, just like a big release. And then I wrote, in an affirmative sense, everything that I wanted to attract as an affirmation, as if it was already happening. So it was a two-step process. It was what I was getting rid of and releasing, and then what I saw coming in as if it had already happened. So I had these two different papers, and I put on some white clothes symbolizing, a new start, purity. And then I said my affirmations around it, which were a combination of some prayers and mantras. And then I just burned it, just as a symbolic way of transmuting all that had been in that very precise moment. And, if things didn't really start shifting from exactly that moment, it was miraculous.
Yeah, absolutely. And I absolutely agree. And it's one of the things that I talk about so much is in that releasing and replenishing is exactly that, is taking the letters and the energy of what I don't want any longer and burning it, so that then you can transmute the energy, then setting the intention like I did on my list, the things that I wanted to create, and then burning that and putting that energy out into the universe, and being aware enough to say, you know what, I am in a funky place and I am not going to stay here. So I'm going to release this and I'm going to bring this in. And I absolutely agree 100% with the burning. It's one of the most important things I think that we can do when our container is full, is get it out. And a lot of times people don't understand that, when it's in your physical body, when you're feeling all those emotions and thinking all those thoughts, it is going to manifest either externally in an experience or physically within your body. For me, that's one of the ways that I manifested so much of my emotional pain was through physical pain, illness, disease. And when I started realizing that when I write things down, it takes it from the physical of my body and I put it onto physical paper. And so it literally almost transfers that energy because I'm acknowledging it, and it's a form of releasing from my body. And so then when I burn it, it transmutes the energy. It says, okay, thank you, universe. Thank you for what I've learned. Thank you for what I've gained. Thank you for what it is that I needed to experience in this, because I appreciate that. I want to take the value from it, and now I can release it with the awareness that something great is coming from it.
It is fascinating, the power of written words in affirmations, and people may not realize that they're affirming something when they keep a journal. Now, I've had several clients who have done this. They keep a journal documenting what happened in their lives, and I had this one client in particular who kept all these journals about, her marriage that had failed, about things that had happened, about abuse that had happened in her life. And she kept these written in these journals in her nightstand. Okay?
Yeah, right next to her bed. Right next to her bed.
Yeah. I'm with you, girl. I'm with you. I said, we really need to release this because this is like concrete of negativity, setting it like in concrete shoes right on
and then living right next to that vibration every night when you go to bed.
And you wonder why you're stuck, you wonder why you can't shift, you wonder why you're attracting the same kind of relationships. I said, okay, if you're not willing to burn them, and I said, I really encourage you to burn them all. She's like, I'm going to turn them into, a screenplay or a book. I said, don't memorialize your misery. Really seriously, seriously. But if at least put it in the garage, at least get it out of the house if you're unwilling to burn it. And it's interesting because we strongly identify with, when something has gone wrong in our lives. It's almost like as if we tie that string around our finger, that painful string, that somehow it won't happen again. And I have to tell you, in fact, the reverse is true.
Yes. And I swear we have the same life experiences. You're telling my story. I've had that happen with hundreds of clients over and over and over again, and it's so interesting the resistance that people have to let go of their pain, to burn that journal. So many of them, I have to say the same thing. Okay, then put it in a safe out in the garage, so it's not in the same space that you're living in. And there's so much resistance to that. Well, this is, it's almost like this is my proof of why I am the way I am, how much pain I've suffered, or how strong I am, or it's my badge of honor, or whatever. And really, it's the excuse for not moving forward.
Mm-hmm.
If we just get down to the bottom line.
Well, what it is I think that if I can encourage any of you listening, and I know that we have thousands of people registered for these calls, is that the single most powerful step you can take to your own personal freedom is to transmute your laundry list of pain.
Yeah.
Whatever it is, tell that story, tell it one time like you've never told it before, and don't ever tell it again.
Yep, get it out.
Get it out. It's like
get
a
it out of your body, out of your energy, out of your vibration. And the burning is so symbolic and so helpful because it literally, in the burning of the story of the paper, it is transmuting it in front of you. And if you allow it to transmute in front of you in that way, then the manifestation of that transmutation is coming.
Absolutely. So I want you to go grab your lighters and your matches. We want to hear all about it. But no, sincerely, this is so important because today on Spirituality Bootcamp, we are talking about how you can use the power of affirmation to have a quantum shift in your life. And thank you so much for Sunny Dawn Johnston. She's here with us. We're going to talk about what are some of the possibilities beyond this amazing release? Like if you're brave enough to let that go, what can be possible for you? And thank you so much for being with us here on the series here. It's part of VividLife University. It's a 7-week series we're rolling out this summer called Spirituality Bootcamp, the 7 Principles of Spiritual Practice. And they start with sacred space. We've talked about forgiveness. We've talked about gratitude. Right now we're focusing on affirmation and our wonderful guest, Sunny Dawn Johnston. We were just talking about, how important it is to release, that novel, that chronicle, that screenplay of pain that we store, that we treasure in our lives. And I know that when I let go of mine, that all kinds of things happened for me. Over the course of a year, I lost 50 pounds. All my intuitive channels opened up. I wrote a book in 6 months, and that was the beginning of, launching this whole platform that I'm doing right now, which is, being a media coach in the premier media production company for the wellness and spiritual marketplace. Like, I would have never dreamed about that if I hadn't let go of the old story, because there wasn't going to be enough room. So what has happened for you, Sunny, as a result? I mean, I know you're traveling all over the place. You're going to Omega Institute and Chicago for the Infinity Center. I mean, you're traveling the world yourself. Would this have been possible with the thinking and the language that you had said to yourself before?
Oh, my goodness. In my experience at that time, I was on food stamps and welfare and barely getting by. And the environment that I lived in was so toxic on so many levels. And I had a young baby in that environment, and I didn't really see an out. And when I started, and literally, I didn't know how to ask for help either. And I think that's important. Is I didn't know how to ask for help from the universe, from God, from the angels, from whatever your spiritual source is. And I didn't know how to ask for help from people. And so when I started doing the affirmations, it was almost like, for me, it was a safe way where I didn't have to tell anybody else all of my crap and how much pain I was in and where I was at. It was a safe way for me to try to take a baby step, put my toe in the water, so to speak, of maybe there's something else besides this for me. Because I was too scared to fail again, because I felt like my entire life was a failure. And so I couldn't do that. It couldn't be too big. It had to be a baby step. So for me, affirmations were that baby step. And, now my life is, completely different. The biggest thing I would say is that I love myself. And in that energy of higher vibration, where I can really own and love myself, with all the stuff, with all the pain, the choices, the experiences, with all of the life experience that I've had, I can really own that energy of unconditional love for myself. That's the greatest change. And affirmations were one of the most important tools, along with working with the angels and that unconditional loving energy, that said, okay, you know what, you got to tell a new story, girl, because this story is old. And not only is it old, but it's making you sick. And so for me, a lot of it was I had a lot of lack energy. I had lack mentality with money, with relationships, with health, with almost any area that we would look at, spirituality as well. And now I would say that I am abundant, and I have this energy and this vibration of excitement and joy, and I still to this day use affirmations daily. It's still one of my active spiritual practices every single morning. There's 4 things I do every morning. One of them is I meditate, and in my meditation, it depends on what I feel guided to as to what I do. But I create that sacred space and acknowledge that space within me that is connected to that source energy. I call on Archangel Michael, who is the angel of protection, and I ask him to surround me and protect me, because as a sensitive being, I do absorb energy of other people if I don't protect and maintain my own energy. So I do that. I open my arms every single day to the universe, and I say, I am open and receptive to all that is good. And I say that until I feel it. I do that every day and have for the last 15 years, that one affirmation. And then I ask Spirit, how may I serve? And those 4 things are part of my spiritual practice that I do daily in the morning. And then I use affirmations throughout the day, depending on what's going on in my life. And so and a lot of people, I think, struggle with finding an affirmation, so it's really important to recognize it doesn't have to be any, fantastic words. It can just be a heartfelt energy of I'm open to love, or I'm open to healing, or I am peace, or I'm surrounded by angels, or, I see myself in perfect health. So it's so important to have it be, I think, for me it was anyway, and I think it sounds like it was for you too, Kristen, consistency.
Yes. That is the key right here, is that you said you've been doing the same practice for 15 years, and, with variations. And I know for myself that when I made the commitment to the daily practice, it's like, and I talked about, this is why I created the series, it's like when you go to the gym and you say, I want to get fit, and you only go one time. You're not going to see any results.
Right.
Like you can even go for a week and you may not see any results. But if you go consistently, and I'm not saying to be a fanatic about it, you don't need to, your morning practice doesn't need to take 3 hours until lunchtime. Okay, I get clients who are like, I've been meditating for hours. And I say, well, then you're hiding, because you're not, you're using it as an excuse not to engage. And the universe loves someone who's in the flow, who's out there serving, who's out there with their arms open saying, how can I participate in my growth and the growth of others? They don't want you to just sit in there in your sanctuary communing with the non-physical entities because we live in a physical world. And so, your practice can be very efficient. It can be precise. It can be 10 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes. It's more important that you just do it.
Yeah, and I think that it's important to do it and do it from a place of joy and love instead of what oftentimes the reason people are meditating for 3 hours is because it's coming from a place of fear. If I don't do this, then A, B, C, and D. I think when you're doing it, this is just part of my spiritual connection and my spiritual practice to say, okay, I'm honoring spirit first, and in that, these are the steps I do. It's not coming from a fear place. It's coming from a place of I love myself enough to honor my spirit and my body and my experience in this physical world. And I absolutely agree that it is oftentimes when we stay in that space a way of hiding and not showing up physically. We are in the physical form. We're not supposed to go back to non-physical yet. When we do, we won't need to do this.
Right.
We won't need these tools. There's not going to be a radio show over there and a workshop in this great university. We'll already know all this. So,
absolutely. So tell us a little bit, because believe it or not, we're already almost out of time. Tell us a little bit about, I know you're going to be sharing with us, an advanced class. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, the advanced class is going to be really step-by-step process of how to flip it. I think a lot of people do recognize, hey, I'm in this stinkin' thinkin' place, but I don't really know how to do it. And I did a class a couple of months ago that was really, really popular, and I called it Flip It. And it was learning how to create the affirmations and the energy that you desire to manifest, how to raise your vibration with simple, practical tools, just little baby steps, getting your toe in the water, and giving people scenarios of, okay, you're in this experience, how are you going to change it? And in areas of, body image and self-love and prosperity and health and career and addiction, those are all areas where we can flip and shift that vibration from the negative, because there's a reason why we're in it. Take the value of it and move it into a positive and get out of that lower vibrational space so that you can be in joy, ultimately, so you can be in joy. We are meant to be living a joyful life. It doesn't have to be so hard.
Absolutely. And what a transformational opportunity. I mean, think about anything that's going on in your life that you would like to change if you could just flip it. And I know that you are a powerful teacher and a powerful healer, and so I encourage all of you to register for this advanced class. I know we're only accepting a very limited number because you will be working with some people directly. There will be a live Q&A inside the 4-week classes. So you will get a link to register for this advanced class and the other advanced classes that are offered. Sunny, also tell us just a little bit about what you're doing. I know you're traveling a lot, next several months, even you've been traveling this whole year. Where can people find you?
Oh boy, I'm all over the place. I'm going to be in Washington State in August, and then I'm going to be traveling all over Omega Institute in September, and then all down the East Coast, North Carolina, South Carolina, down into Florida. In October, I'll be in Tennessee and Kentucky and all over the South, and then November I'll be in Sedona with Celebrate Your Life, and I'll be in Cincinnati, Ohio, and Indiana. So I still got a lot of states I'm covering on my book tour. And I just wanted to say one thing real quick, Kristen. One of the reasons I chose to do this, to participate in this university, is because I really do believe that the 7 spiritual laws that you were talking about are so important. They are the laws I practice within myself, and I work towards being the best I can be every day. And so I really agreed with the message, and I think that for those of you that are listening that have been stuck, these areas, if you can shift your awareness from where you've been, wherever that is, to something that will shift that vibration a little bit for you, your life can get more into flow. And that is what we're all looking for, I think, ultimately, is just that peace and that joy, that love.
I'm just getting those full body chills of confirmation. So every time I hear like words of truth, you get the buzz.
Mm-hmm. I love those. I love them.
So thank you, angels, for that, and thank you, Sunny Dawn Johnston, for being such an angel and participating in this series. And I really appreciate it. And I know for all of you listening that these principles work, because I follow them myself, and it has been a quantum transformation, and I teach my clients to follow them. And so when I was talking to Shane Travis, I said, I think it really just boils down to these 7 things, and if we just are persistent with these principles, you will go to wherever it is that you need to go next. I believe that with every cell in my being.
And then your life can be whatever it is you desire it to be, and it will be greater than what you would ever have imagined for yourself. I think mine is that way. I hear yours is that way. I think that when you really follow it, it's an amazing, amazing journey.
I know. I think that's really it right there, is that whatever you think is possible for you is just the tiniest speck of what really is possible for you.
Yeah.
Because everything that's happened, it's been like maybe 7 years since I really started doing the principles, and I was just in a meltdown then. I couldn't have even fathomed that this would happen. I also have like my second book coming out. I'm speaking in London, I'm speaking in Rhode Island. I'm all over the place, and I think that I wouldn't have believed that.
Right.
Time.
Who would have thunk, right? Who would have thunk?
All right. So, to all of you that are listening, thank you so much for joining us, and thank you, Sunny Dawn Johnston, and safe travels. And we will see you next week for the next in the series of Spirituality Boot Camp. I believe we're talking about visualization, and that ties in so nicely with affirmations. So, to everyone, good night, and Sunny, thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
All right. Bye-bye, everyone. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Blog Talk Radio, where millions of hosts and listeners gather.
Is where I started realizing that the more that I focus on it and the more that I affirm it, it comes into the feeling of it. And in the feeling of it is where then the manifestation occurs. But it definitely started with the affirmations.
I love what you're talking about, and thank you so much for mentioning that book by Louise Hay, You Can Heal Your Life. I am a firm believer not only of that book, there's some other ones that I love that are great for affirmations. There's, of course, Catherine Ponder's Dynamic Laws of Prosperity, and for those of you who like Paramahansa Yogananda, we have his Scientific Healing Affirmations. I mean, there's so many great books out there that have affirmative statements. And, if you don't know where to start, even something as simple as, trusting in God, I'm assured of right outcomes, or, I am well and I am in the divine flow. I mean, it can be something really simple. I think that's important to share with everyone, is that we don't have to have this elaborate manifesto of positivity just to start to see results in our lives.
Right, absolutely, and I think it's so important to be able to know that, if you get stuck and you're like in a bad space, let's say, you can just say, I am love, and that can just at least be something until you can get to a place of thinking, okay, what is it that I'm focusing on?
Get ready to expand your intuition, connect to God, experience deeper relationships, open your heart and feel more joy, and finally end the chaos in your life. Are you ready to get unstuck and more? You ask, how do I do it? The answer is simple. time has come for peak spiritual fitness. It starts right now on Spirituality Bootcamp with your host, Kristen White.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us. We are now in week 4 of the wonderful series, Spirituality Bootcamp, the 7 Principles of Spiritual Practice. And whether you've been with us all along or you're just joining us, we're so thrilled to have you with us on this journey. You know, we started out talking about sacred space, and then we went into the expansive practice of gratitude, and then moved into forgiveness. And now, in this week, we are heading into what I believe, for many of us, is the most important and powerful place to really take a look and make a big shift in our lives. And this is the language that we speak to ourselves, inside ourselves, every single day. You know, a good friend of mine is a Tibetan monk, and he talks about having the monkey mind. And I know many of you out there have heard about the monkey.
To get from a place of the natural thoughts that were in my head, which were negative and which were putting myself down and not seeing the value in myself, and really make a conscious effort to focus on speaking kindly to myself and thinking kind thoughts about myself and others, of course. But it starts with us, and then the ripple effect of that moves outward to the people around us. So it's an extremely powerful tool, and I would say one of the most critical ones in my life in turning myself from a lower vibrational place of self-hatred and anger and frustration to a place of self-love and joy and peace.
You know, what you're saying resonates with me so deeply as well, because I know that, you know, when I started on this journey that led me to create Spirituality Bootcamp, one of the things that really turned things around for me is that I consciously committed to using powerful, high vibration language in the form of affirmations, even though I didn't necessarily believe it was true at the time, because my life was having like a meltdown. Mm-hmm. But I said, you know what, I need to put an energetic, fuel injection that's positive into the situation. So I affirmed that positive things were happening, even though everything at the time appeared to me otherwise. But it started to shift very quickly when I realized that I monkey mind, and that is the repetitive thoughts that we find just chattering up. They're like bubbles. They come up in our mind. Often we don't even voice these words. But what these words are is they really are a strong message to the universe about what we want to attract into our lives. So whether they're positive or negative, that oftentimes determines the impact of what we see unfolding before us in that present moment. So the guest that I have on today, I'm so excited to have her, Sunny Dawn Johnston. She is a psychic medium. She has a direct connection to the angels, and she's written an incredible new book called Invoking the Archangels, the 9-step process for healing your body, mind, and soul. And so she's going to join us right now and share with us a lot about this whole idea of affirmations and the positive impact our language can have on us. So, Sunny, thank you for being with us.
Thank you so much. I'm excited to be here.
I know.
Very excited.
We were just talking about the power of language, and what are your thoughts around that?
Well, I think that it's so important to be mindful of what it is that's going on in our heads. I like that monkey, what did you call it, monkey business? Or
the monkey mind.
The monkey mind, monkey mind. I think that's great. I call it stinkin thinkin. But same idea, we have to be really, really conscious and aware of what it is that we're focused on and what we keep replaying over and over in our heads. And, for me, that was such a challenging experience.
Wasn't reinforcing the negative, that I had started to put energy into that flow of more positive vibrations in my life.
Absolutely. And that's really what happened for me, too. When I was 19, I was a single teenage pregnant mom, and right after I gave birth to my son, realized that the environment that I was in, living with an alcoholic and being in a very unhealthy physical and emotional environment, I realized, I got to do something to shift this. And the book that I found that created the awareness for me was You Can Heal Your Life by Louise Hay. And in that book, she said, just start saying nice things, even if they don't feel real. Just like you said, even if they don't feel real, just start saying them. And so I did that, and I didn't believe them, and I just kept doing it because I didn't have anything else to do. There was nothing else to focus on, and so I thought, well, maybe this will work. And the more I did it, the more I did it, and the more I didn't. It wasn't necessarily at the time that I felt like the things were true, but it did take time in my brain and time in my physical experience to then not be focusing on the negative. So it replaced that negative thinking that was just happening without even being conscious of it, and I had a conscious effort to focus on things even if I didn't believe them that were a higher vibration. And that started to move the energy to a place of, okay, now I can feel that higher vibration. Now some of these things actually might feel like they're a little bit within reach. And from there,